taking my son to see where I came up at, where I grew up at. Where I grew up at. Oh, yeah. Come on, son.
7C.
See, Pastor, back in the day, everybody looked out for each other.
Right.
So my mama would leave and go to work. I still had to make it to school
Right.
in the morning. But everybody looked out for each other.
Yeah.
Through the middle of that cut right there, that's where I learned to play football.
Right here?
You go through there. Hey, is there still a laundromat right in the middle?
Yeah.
The laundromat right in the middle. No, that's where we used to go wash clothes and everything. Because ain't nobody had to wash and dry. But I learned how to play football with a milk jug right in the middle of that grass right there. We used to go at it. But we looked out for each other. I don't know if we can still do that today.
Deion Sanders just took Shedeur back to the neighborhood where it all started, where a young Deion first picked up the game using a milk jug. The life lesson he shared in that graveyard, the same one where he sharpened his speed, tells you everything you need to know about why Shedeur has the mental toughness that so many critics claimed he was missing. Before we get into Deion's thoughts on suspended hope and that moment when a nervous resident spotted him outside his old condemned apartment, you need to understand something. This trip wasn't just a walk down memory lane. This was Deion showing Shedeur that the confidence people mistake for arrogance came from a father who refused to let poverty define who he was. When Shiloh had to step in and explain to a stranger who they were looking at, it was crystal clear. Deion, primetime Sanders, had raised his kids to truly understand the sacrifices he made to give them opportunities he never had. Here's what went down. Deion took Shedeur and Shiloh back to Fort Myers, Florida. Not the nice parts, not the tourist spots, the actual projects where he grew up, the rundown apartment buildings, the graveyards, the patches of grass where kids played kill the carrier with a milk jug because nobody owned a real football. The whole trip was built around one message: if you don't know where you came from, you can't figure out where you're going. Their first stop was the original apartment complex, Building 7C specifically. The way Deion talked about life there makes the contrast between his childhood and his kids' upbringing hit even harder. He laid it all out for his sons. Even with my mom not going to work, I still had to find a way to get to school. Everyone had each other's backs. That's what community is all about. That's making it through by having each other's backs. That right there is the foundation that built Deion Sanders into prime time, long before the money and the fame ever showed up. Then Deion pointed to a spot on the grass. That cut right there, man, that's the place I picked up the game of football. Think about that for a second. One of the greatest players in NFL history developed his game on a dirt patch between apartment buildings. No youth leagues, no expensive camps, no private coaches, just kids, a milk jug, and pure imagination. He told his sons, "We used to play right in the middle of that grass with a milk jug because no one had a washer and dryer. We hit up the laundromat, but I ended up picking up some football skills right on the spot." Shedeur stood there taking it all in, and you could see his mind working, because Shedeur's childhood looked nothing like that. He had access to training facilities, top-level equipment, real coaching, everything Deion never had. And that's exactly the point Deion was making. The journey, the sacrifices, the gap between playing with a milk jug and making it to the NFL, that's what paved the road Shedeur gets to walk on now. But here's where it really gets deep. Deion wasn't just talking about struggling through poverty. He was showing his son what that hardship actually produces: the ingenuity, the creativity, the drive to chase greatness when you're starting with absolutely nothing. Then they went to the second spot, and that's where everything shifted. The house at 1625 Lane, the one that was condemned about a month earlier, sitting right between two graveyards, one on each side of the road. Deion stood there with his boys and told the story of where his legendary speed actually came from. Check out that graveyard down there. Graveyards flanking the road on both sides. We didn't have any street lights, so you're familiar with the tale of graveyards. Shedeur and Shiloh both nodded. Everyone knows the stories, the fear, the superstitions, the way a graveyard at night turns into something that feels alive. Deion told them how it worked. We used to bolt down here at full speed, wide open, because we were heading straight into a graveyard. That's where Deion Sanders' speed came from. Not just raw talent, not some structured training program. It was running through graveyards at night, driven by pure fear and zero other options. Fear built his speed. Necessity pushed him toward greatness. Poverty forged the work ethic that eventually made him prime time. Shedeur was right there, soaking up every word, processing the fact that the swagger his father carries, the same swagger that earned him a spot in the Hall of Fame, started with a little boy who had to sprint past graves just to make it home safely. That's not arrogance, that's survival that turned into dominance. Then something happened that put public perception of the Sanders family into sharp focus. A resident came out of one of the apartments looking anxious, clearly at a loss for words. Shiloh had to step in. "You do realize that's Deion prime time, right? Are you following me?" The guy admitted he was rattled, that he didn't even know what to say. He was standing face to face with a living legend right outside his own front door. Deion's pastor, who was filming the whole thing, dropped a line that stopped everyone cold. This demonstrates that even in the bleakest circumstances, hope still exists. He's been suspended. Every time you switch it back on, the same thing happens again. Let that sink in. That resident wasn't just starstruck. He was looking at proof that someone who came from the exact same place he's standing in right now had broken free, achieved everything the world said wasn't possible for a kid from the Fort Myers projects. That hope that had gone dark, it came back on in that moment. That's the power of representation. Deion bringing his sons back to the hood means more than most people realize, because those kids in those apartments now have Shedeur Sanders to look at. A kid raised with every resource in the world, sure, but also a kid whose father started with nothing. A young athlete whose confidence is built on a legacy of grinding through the hardest circumstances imaginable. And maybe, just maybe, some kid watching from those apartments will see Shedeur's success in Cleveland and think, if Coach Prime's son can do this, coming from a lineage that started with milk jugs and graveyards, then maybe I can too. That's next-level motivation. That's a legacy that goes way beyond football stats. Now, let's bring this back to why this trip matters for Shedeur's NFL career. The media spent months tearing apart his confidence during draft coverage. They called him arrogant, said he didn't have the humility to succeed, questioned whether a kid who grew up with everything could handle the grind of the NFL. But standing in those graveyards, watching his father describe sprinting through the dark, driven by fear, Shedeur got a perspective the media never bothered to consider. Shedeur's confidence isn't built on entitlement. It's built on watching his father refuse to accept any ceiling. Deion Sanders grew up being told that kids from his neighborhood didn't make it, and his response was to become one of the greatest of all time. That's the blueprint Shedeur inherited. It's bigger than talent and resources. It's a mindset that says outside expectations have no say in what you can accomplish on the inside. When Cleveland media asks whether Shedeur can handle the pressure of being a franchise quarterback, here's your answer. This kid understands pressure on a level most people can't touch. He walked through the graveyards where his father built his greatness. That's not a privilege making him soft. That's education building his resilience. Deion also dropped a gem about teaching that explains everything about how he coaches. How often does a person truly get the chance to showcase their full potential? I often find that I can't fully express what I have to offer, as it's on a different level that others just don't seem to grasp. You need to simplify it. That's Deion acknowledging that he operates at a level most can't reach. But when he's working with someone who genuinely wants it, someone hungry for knowledge and greatness, they pull more out of him than he could give on his own. Shedeur is exactly that person, driven, self-challenging, always searching for the deeper question. Deion can teach Shedeur things he simply cannot teach most players. Shedeur gets it. He's seen the graves, he knows the milk jug story, he understands what his father went through, and that understanding translates directly into NFL success. When you know that your father's speed was built in pure darkness, you realize your own speed, mentally, physically, emotionally, comes from running toward the hard stuff instead of away from it. The mango story might be the most powerful example of all. Deion told his sons how they used to go into the graveyard hunting for mangoes. In the neighborhood, mangoes never seemed to ripen. They're set to take them down sooner than expected. Kids would search for mangoes in the graveyard just to find something to eat. That's resourcefulness at its rawest. That's making something out of nothing. That's the complete opposite of entitlement. Shedeur watched his father climb a tree and knock down mangoes, exactly the way he did as a kid. Not because he needed to this time, but to show his sons how it was done. The skills that poverty forces you to develop don't leave you. They become part of who you are forever. Shedeur carried that lesson home from this trip. Struggle builds ability. Hardship shapes identity. Comfort is the enemy of greatness, and he needed to understand that before heading into his second NFL season. Because year 2 is when the excuses dry up. Year 2 is when the rookie label is gone. Year 2 is when you prove you belong, or you don't. Shedeur just got the realest lesson on what belonging actually means. It doesn't mean fitting in, it means refusing to leave. It means sprinting through a graveyard because getting home matters more than being scared.
That's the mindset that's going to carry him through whatever Cleveland throws at him in 2026. The offensive line might still struggle, the media might keep pushing, the heat might get turned up even higher, but none of that compares to graveyards and milk jugs. None of it compares to what Deion had to push through to build the life that gave Shedeur his shot. Deion made sure his son understood all of it. Shedeur walked the same ground, touched the same buildings, felt the same energy that turned a kid from the projects into prime time. This wasn't a vacation. This was a classroom. Deion Sanders made certain his son will always know where this family came from, will always value the resources he has access to, and will never confuse privilege with weakness. Privilege only becomes weakness when you forget the sacrifice that built it. But when you've walked through the graveyards where your father found himself, when you've seen the milk jug he turned into a football, when you've stood in the broken down apartments that shaped who he became, privilege stops being a gift and starts being a responsibility. The responsibility to honor those sacrifices, to make the most of every opportunity, to become everything that your father's struggle made possible. Shedeur Sanders is ready to make his mark in Cleveland, not out of obligation, but out of a genuine, deep-in-the-bones understanding of what was given up to give him this chance. That's what makes the Sanders family different. The confidence that critics love to knock, it's not ego. It's generational knowledge. Shedeur walks into every room with his head up, even as a fifth-round pick, because he's seen what could have been. He knows what nothing looks like, and he is not about to waste what his father built. The graveyard sprint, the milk jug football, hunting mangoes in a cemetery. These aren't just stories Deion told his sons. They're lessons in resourcefulness, resilience, and the will to break through every limitation that poverty tries to put on you. For Shedeur, this trip was a reminder that the privilege his critics use against him came at a real price. It was paid in graveyards and hunger, in fear and hard times, by a father who looked at everything stacked against him and decided none of it got to win. Shedeur is now carrying that legacy forward, not by reliving the struggle, but by honoring the sacrifice through everything he does on that field. By never forgetting that everything he has exists because his father refused to stop running even in the dark. That's what this hood visit was really about. Not nostalgia, not sentiment, responsibility, vision, and a son who finally understands all the way to his core exactly what it cost to get here.